Good morning and welcome to Social Work in Trenches with Zoe, Barbara, and myself, Alexi. We are fellow social workers, and this podcast is where we bring real conversations from the field. What we see, what we experience, and what families are actually going through every day. Just a reminder, this podcast is for educational purposes only. The conversations we have here are meant to inform, reflect, and raise awareness, but they are not substitutes for professional assistance. Today, we're discussing about something a lot of families going through, but very few are actually prepared for. What happens when parents and adult children start living under the same roof again, wherever it's aging parent moving in or adult child stepping in to help. This is usually framed as a practical decision. But in reality, it's a relationship shift. And research supports this. Families don't struggle because they don't care. They struggle because they are underestimate how complex this becomes. Roles change, boundaries change, expectations change. And maybe most importantly, the relationship from independence to something else, something like control. Because once you're living together, it's no longer about being independent. It's about living together in a relationship. So, what makes this transition so emotional for family?
I would say, based on my own observation, sometimes it's difficult for families because there's been already a breakdown in the family dynamics, right? Whether it's parents not really having a good relationship with the children or vice versa, the children not really having a great relationship with their parents, or the children, the adult children feeling like it's not their responsibility to take care of the parent. And again, culturally, you have to make a lot of room for different cultures because in some cultures, it is normal for you to take care of parents, grandparents when they get older or is no longer able to take care of themselves or if they gotten sick. A lot of cultures, that is the norm. But unfortunately, in some cultures, that is not the norm. And the parent would end up in places like a nursing home or adult home for others to take care of them. So I would say a lot of times the reason why that is difficult is because there's a strain somewhere in the relationship.
I'll agree with that, but I think one of the biggest, no matter what culture, right? It's like you have to uproot your whole life.
Mm-hmm.
Like there's this it's a change for everybody. Um
Right.
Maybe you have to get a bigger apartment or bigger house. What if you don't have the funds to do that? Work schedules change, having your little ones in the home and then having your parent living with you again. So I think it's just like a matter of having to uproot your entire life and your schedule. And then the issue of money. It's like, can I afford to do this? Can I afford to, make the financial sacrifices? What does that look like for me as the caregiver? And then, like you were saying, what if the relationship is strained? But then, there's this guilt. I have to do this. It's my mom, it's my dad, or whoever. And it could just be something you don't really want to do, but you feel that you have to do. And that's the worst way to go into something. So I
Right.
think definitely the financial struggle and then just like maybe not really wanting to be the caregiver, you know?
So, it sounds like that there's this combination of identity, being son, daughter, niece, nephew, sometimes maybe a family member or like a brother, sister. And then now this is a new term comes in that's can be caregiver. And so then is a strain becomes because now I'm also adding another set of expectations and
Mhm.
rules, or is that because it's mostly about money?
It can be both, but here's
Mhm.
the thing, and like we've discussed in the other podcasts, right? If you plan it out, it doesn't have to be life altering. Yes, it's going to be a change. But I think if families really start
Mm.
sitting together, so several things can be true at the same time, right? You have some individuals who don't have children. So then you have to pick a family member or a friend who you trust to make and help with these decisions. That's one. Two, if you do have the family member, you have to start planning in advance to say, okay, if I become sick, if something happens to me, this is what I like to see happen. I like to move in with you, or I like for you to move in with me. And we can pool our income together, assuming that this individual is getting a pension or social security every month. That can help balance the books in terms of living arrangements. Then you have to say, okay, if I am moving in with you or you moving in with me, am I obtaining additional help in terms of home care? And what would that look like? Is that going to be 5 hours a day, 6 hours a day, 8 hours a day? Am I going to work from home? Or am I going to alter my working schedule? So, all these things have to be discussed prior to the actual event. But unfortunately, we live in a world where a lot of these conversations are not happening, and people are dealing with the situations in the actual moment.
I'm gonna play devil's advocate just because I like to. Let's just say it's all planned out. Um, financial is not an issue. You've worked out all the kinks, right? And I'm only bringing this up because of my grandmother and my aunt, who I love dearly, but they drive me crazy. Um, all of that stuff has been figured out, but they fight so much. And then, when I go to visit, one wants to tell me her version, the other wants to tell me her version. And it's just like, oh my goodness, I like you two should not be living together. I always think about those things, right? Like, fine, you planned everything out, but like, you really just don't get along. It's
Right,
like, I love you, but I can't live with you. Like, I shouldn't be living with you. And so, like,
right.
what happens? What happens then? I mean, not that I know this wouldn't happen between my grandmother and my aunt. Those types of relationships sometimes lead to abuse,
Right. And then it
you know.
takes a person with keen eyes to
Mm.
have that conversation to say, based on what I'm seeing, based on what I'm observing, based on what I'm hearing, you guys should not live together. And maybe you should consider alternate care or having someone come in to take care of the person. So if it is that I'm spending too much time in the house with you every day. I'm with you every day and I've stopped working or I'm now working from home. Maybe that's too much. So you change the dynamics. Okay, go back out to work and have someone come in to provide care. Then, if still that is the issue where they're arguing and fighting, and as you say, it's not healthy for both individuals, and that could be a recipe for disaster. It's some type of abuse, verbal, physical, financial abuse. I would say, you know what? Let's find the best solution where we're not arguing all the time. We're not fighting all the time. I could come and see you whenever I want. You can come and see me whenever you want. But it cannot be that we're under the same roof.
We talk about tensions, but do you think that these tensions shows up hard because how we see independence, right? Especially in American society?
Hmm.
We
Hmm.
always perceive that you turn 18, you go away to college. You separate yourself from parents. So
Right.
you become your own person. This identity being, now it's my time. Now I'm adult. I'm making decisions for myself. Then there's a shift happens where now my mom or dad, they change and they're getting elder more and they may not be coherent. And then they become a different person. We're not the same individuals when we are in our 20s and 30s. We change as we experience life, as we our thought process changes, right? Our think about events change, so we become a different person
Mm.
sometimes. So, do you think there's a conflict between this idea of wanting to be independent and now somebody else coming in and setting their own rules, and then their own expectations, and then when those two things does not um, align, then the tension comes up, which then tends to lead to
Can
conflict.
be.
What are you guys' thoughts about that?
Yeah, I mean, I feel like American culture can be that, right? Like we tend to steer away from people that can no longer do for us in a way. And like I hate to say that, but I do see that a lot in American culture. I mean, if I think about the lifespan, right, the lifespan cycles, I almost feel like we know this is coming. We know that at some point we have to help our parents or our sick children or our sick family member. We know it's coming. So why such resistance towards it? I really want to say that I think there's just a lot of times it comes down to lack of planning and lack of finances. I feel like those are the two big ones because we do know that this is coming. And I do feel that, at some point in our lives as we get older, we are able to meet our parents, where they are. We're able to see them as human beings. And I would hate to think that people are so selfish and not want to take care of a person that gave you life. Maybe I'm thinking about it too deeply. American culture is that at times. I want my freedom. I've worked hard to get here. I don't know if I can give up where I am in my life right now to take care of a sick person. It doesn't fit into my life.
Well, I also think sometimes parents or grandparents are not aware, right? They're not aware that I have dementia or I have Alzheimer's or I have some cognitive issues. I've had a stroke. I am no longer able to physically or mentally do the things that I used to do. And unfortunately, if they don't have people in their lives present all the time who've been saying these things and showing up for them, they might not recognize that they actually need help.
I always, there's one areas that I always come back to and then talk to different clients and came throughout my work where people like, especially around disability, when the children who become disabled or still rely on their parents, and then there's that aspect where adult child still lives in home, being taken care of by a mom,
Mm,
and then they kind of it's not that resentful, but they also there's this feeling that like they still have to rely on this person, but they still want to make their own decisions.
Right.
mm,
And part of that conflict becomes, well, how do we trade things? How do we trade and then work through this tension? Because I feel sometimes we don't want to work through it. It feels
mm,
sometimes like, well, I want my way and that's it.
mm.
I don't want the way you do things. I want my how I want it, my preferences. And
Right.
sometimes I go back and forth, and there's this concept called interdependence,
Uh-huh.
where it's not that you're dependent, but it's not about the independence. The goal becomes is very simple. How do I get from point A to point B
Mm,
least amount of energy to use? Because if I have to spend on my own getting dressed, it takes me 3 hours to do so. And after I get dressed myself, there's no more energy to do anything else and
right.
throughout the day. Is it worth to do that? Spend all the time and energy to do that task. Or have someone assistant me. I could explain how I like to do. Hopefully they could do that and respect me enough to do so. And then I could use other things to do on my own or do things that
Mhm,
I see then the goal really becomes how do I navigate that conversation? So because we could then change our relationship on things that it's no longer becomes about dependency or dependency, but rather how do we enjoy this moment, and then how do I get myself further, and then
mhm,
also allows parent who is, let's say, in this situation, is assisting, able to still give the person their space.
mm,
But we need that space ourselves, right? We need that
mhm.
ability to manage a space and able to influence that space and able to just to say, I need this time off. And we
Yeah,
would like to see that other person respecting that. And I think sometimes that this theorem interdependence helps with that framing of the conversation.
yeah. I
I
mean,
think sometimes it's go ahead, Barbara.
I was just gonna say, I think it's really important to have outside help. I mean, in situations like that, like, I mean, knowing what I know, right? Like, if I had to take care of my grandmother, for instance, I probably wouldn't want her to change much of her routine because I would want her to stay happy, right? Because if she's happy and things are going the way she wants, I'm happy. And, I can navigate my life while she's still doing things the way she wants. Outside help you have to have it. And maybe that includes an entire team, a therapist, a home health aide, anyone that can make the transition smoother for everyone involved, because I don't think there's any way you can do it alone. And I am going back on something I said in another podcast because, I was pretty judgmental. I think we brought up the Bruce Willis story, and I was a little like, how could, she has a lot of money. How could she hire this entire team and not want to take care of her husband? But when I sat back and really thought about this conversation that we were having today, I was like, wait a second. There's no way. If that were me, I would feel trapped. I would feel alone and scared, right? And probably get very depressed and not be able to take care of anyone because I'm in a dark space.
So then let's put that in a different perspective, right? If you don't have the money with like Bruce Willis money and you
Mm,
can't really hire it, but you can still build a team and have individuals, the doctors, medical team that you trust, and then using the resources in the community and asking them, where do I find support? How the insurance works, that I could get that support when I need it.
Right.
And then having that conversation
Hmm.
and then building out the plan, right?
Right.
And
mhm,
then understanding what who do I need to have in my team so I can get who can provide best care possible for my
Right.
dad,
So,
let's say.
mm,
But then
mm,
also take care of me. Because one thing is in this conversation always the caregiver tends to not to think about themselves and then
right.
exclude themselves out of the conversation. And then their self-care and then their well-being, uh,
absolutely.
right?
Mhm,
We see that I've seen this over and over. So remind individuals to take time for themselves. So part of the team building is a doctor, nurse, social worker, therapist, but also
mhm,
therapist for myself or someone
Right.
right.
in the community who can fill that role where I need to talk and vent and
Mhm,
things like that to go through that.
I agree. I agree, Alexi, because a lot of times what it is that the resources are there and people are
mhm,
not aware. So if you're someone who have Medicare and another supplementary insurance, you might not be aware that there is community Medicaid
mm,
that pays primarily for home care hours. If you have Medicaid, you might be informed by a social worker or therapist that you can get home care hours that way. Or you yourself, the person, the son, the daughter, the cousin, the aunt, the nephew, whomever, might be able to obtain where you are the caregiver and get paid for those services, right? Providing care for that individual. But I agree with you 100%. I need to be happy. I
mm,
need to be stable in order to help you with your instability, whatever is happening, right? If I am unhappy, my life is not stable, guess what happens? I bring that little bit of chaos into your life and then
mm,
it's a hot mess. So I agree that the individual, whomever, whether it's a daughter, son, niece or nephew, mom, dad, whomever it is that's going to be providing the care for this individual, has to take a stock and say, okay, family, who do I need in my corner? I
mm,
cannot do this by myself 24/7 every day. I'm going to get burnt out. So I need to know who else is going to be on board to assist me in this providing this care, and depends on the type of care. Is it that I need to provide physical care? Is it that I need to provide financial care? And if it is physical care, how many hours a day does this person require physical care? Can this person still be on their own with minimal care, right? Because if this person can, then you could work that out within the family or with a home care agency. But if this person cannot be on their own because they have a cognitive condition like dementia, Alzheimer's, they're not safe to be on their own and they need 24-hour supervision, then therefore decisions has to be made. Am I living with you or are you coming to live with me? Am I going to hire someone to assist with care? And am I going to get care from the government? And if all of those, that conversation needs to happen on top of if I am unable to stop what my life is right now as a mom or a dad or whomever to move in with you, then What's the next best step? Is it a nursing home, or is it a kind of group home setting, or is it like an SRO? Is it an assisted living? What is the next area where I can literally have you be safe and get the care that you need? So a lot of conversations need to happen before the event. But as I said, we're living in the real world, and a lot of times the conversations are not happening until the actual event is going on.
So what prevents from conversation to start happening?
I would say a lot of people is in denial. If I ignore it, it will go away. If I ignore this conversation, it's not
Mm,
going to happen. It's like death. If I don't talk about death, death is not going to come. No, death is going to come for every person. It doesn't matter
mm.
your age, it doesn't matter your religion, it doesn't matter your race. Death will come for each person. And each person is going to get older. So whether you're getting older to 70, 90, I mean, I have people that's 105, 106. The point is, you're going to get older at some point. You might not have a physical condition that means that you require more daily ADL care. You might have a mental condition where you, as I said, with dementia, Alzheimer's, that you require supervision care, right? You need some assistance with ADLs, but you also need someone to physically be there to watch you, to make sure you don't hurt yourself, make sure you don't hurt anyone else, or make sure you don't run out of your house or apartment. So I think fear is the big factor why most people, most families are not having these conversations. But if you're like me, where you're Caribbean and you grew up in an environment where you know everyone is living in the same house, grandma, mom, niece, nephew, grandchildren, everyone is still living in the same house, you're not having this conversation because it's like common sense. We're going to take care of you, grandma. We're going to take care of you, mom. You understand? But the average American doesn't no longer live like that. So that's why these conversations need to happen.
I feel like we keep asking these questions, like every podcast, right? We're like, why do you think people are not having these conversations? The reality is, I don't know. I think we should start a survey or something. We need to find out because I mean, the conversations are helpful, they work, right? I mean, preparing yourself is never a bad thing,
Right,
especially in this world that we're living in right now.
right.
I don't know. I don't know why these conversations aren't happening. I could come up with a billion scenarios, but I don't think there's a right answer, like a one answer, right?
No,
There are a lot of dynamics going on within each family. We don't know.
family. Yep, yep.
But we should do a survey. We should start asking.
Yeah, right.
I
I
agree.
think that might be happening, but infrequently, right? In passing. Yeah,
It happens during crisis, right?
yep.
When this happens,
Mhm,
when somebody in the hospital, people come in, start asking questions, figure
mhm.
out what's going on, what's happening, and then take it from
It's
there.
too late. Don't you think it's too late at that point?
Right. You have to have a
Right.
crisis moment. What usually happens, we
Mhm,
react. We are not as proactive as we think we are. We're very
No,
mhm,
reactive. Once things happen, we react, and then
right.
we create a plan. But before, we're not really good at what I've seen in terms of being proactive, preparing for something before it actually happens,
Right,
mhm,
because it goes into that what if category, and I don't
mhm,
want
right,
to think of what if. But then, how do we talk about it if it doesn't? It's not here yet.
right.
And I think that's part of it. We decide, we make decisions, and then we go forward during crisis and after crisis, right? The other part I feel that's happening is that assumptions. We make
Mm-hmm.
assumptions. We all do. We have biases and assumptions.
mhm.
I'm sorry. Even
Yeah.
socialists have it. And then we have what's expectations. Just because from a family member, let's say Zoe mentioned Caribbean, I have to take care of my mom or my
Right,
grandma,
Mhm,
grandpa. But what happens if I don't? What happens if we are thousands of miles away?
right. Then you have guilt.
I feel sometimes, oh, I'm gonna come in, I'm gonna keep all the routines done, like you mentioned,
mhm,
Barbara. Well,
mhm.
that's an assumption on your part.
Right.
But maybe she
That's
wants
what
to do
works
something
for
different.
me.
She's tired of
Mhm.
that routines.
Right. Right.
Maybe those routines is there is because there's nobody else there.
Right.
Well, now it's new person coming in, and maybe she really wants to change those routines. She
That's
wants to do
true.
Right.
different things. and you and then we're coming in and says, no, we're gonna keep the same as you are. I'm just gonna make my changes and everyone's gonna be
Mhm.
happy. And then all of a sudden it becomes just like, no, 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 I don't want to do it. All of a sudden she
Right.
starts changing. You're like, why? What's happening here? Because the
Mhm.
new thing happening, you have
Right.
entered the picture,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
And so we have those assumptions. And so the question becomes that conversation should clarify
Right.
Mhm.
and not having those conversations, sitting down and just talk about it. Because as a part, we have to give as a person and ourselves, in my opinion, idea that they do have agency and they could make
Right.
decisions, they
Right.
clarify things, and
Right.
Mhm.
and having back and forth conversation that could set a new rules, routines, and then also reestablishing the relationship.
Right.
Mhm.
Because being on a phone call, coming in the weekends or during holidays, it's one set of relationships. Now,
Right.
Right.
is a person coming from work, tired, I want to get a shower, eat something, and not really want to interact. And the person like, well, let's talk about your day. I'm like, I don't want to talk about my day
Mhm.
right now. I'm not in the
Right.
mood, right? And those things happen, and it could also affect the how one perceives something, right? And so
Mhm.
I think sometimes we have to step back and to say, can we just talk as two people?
Right.
Right.
So I think one of the things, Alexi, is that as more people are living solitary lives or individually, they're not in that big family dynamic. Like I said, in some Caribbean cultures or some Spanish cultures where everyone is living under the same roof. I think conversations need to continue to happen. So for me, I speak to my mom almost every day, right? I notice immediately when something is wrong. And I would say to her, what's wrong? And she might say nothing. But I'm like, okay, are you having a headache? Did you take your pressure today? What's your numbers? Did you take your medicine? Have you gone outside for a walk? Like I do all these different check-ins because I speak to her so often. I realize when something is off. A lot of times, I think if you're only speaking to your mom or your dad or your aunt or your uncle once a year, twice a year, you're not going to notice the change right away. Right? You're not going to notice that the person has had some kind of cognitive issue going on, or you're not going to notice that the person stopped taking care of their ADLs. But I think if you're on FaceTime and you're talking to the person and you're engaging in daily or weekly conversations, that you might catch it, especially if you're not visiting. If you live far away, you might catch it a little sooner than someone who's only speaking to their family members twice a year. And
Maybe
to
oh,
your
go ahead.
point, to your point, Alexi, when the conversation happens is now when the hospital is calling you to make a decision or informing you that your loved one is in the hospital. And sometimes that's when it's too late because I see this all the time. The person is 95, 96, 7. They have no healthcare proxy, they have no POA, they have no living will, and they don't have any kids. So I'm just like, wait a minute. What happened in this time, right? What was going on? And then when you pull back the layers of the onion, you realize that there were no real family support or, even if they don't have any kids, there were no real connections with the family members.
I was gonna say, Alexi, maybe you hit it on the nose. Maybe it's the inability to have conversations that are causing it to not happen. Maybe, right? Like there's no guide to this conversation. How do you bring up something so emotional? And again, I hate to bring it there, but perhaps that's one of the biggest reasons. We don't know how to have these conversations. We don't know what to ask. We don't know what we're really planning because we don't
Right,
know what's coming.
right,
Does that make sense? It's like we don't know. I mean, obviously, if there's a present disease or something that's happening, then you know what to say or what to talk about. But the pre-planning when there's nothing wrong, what are we really asking?
right.
Does that make sense? Maybe some people just really don't know how to have that conversation.
So, right. But then the key component when we're starting this podcast was if somebody is moving in to another person,
Mhm.
right? And part of that move in Are they moving in and having that conversation? How that's gonna break it down? Almost every
Well,
single part,
right. I'm
or
only saying
assuming, and then us they or they're my mom, they're my dad,
mhm,
I'm their
mhm,
daughter, son, nephew, and then assuming that that conversation doesn't have to happen. How do we talk about privacy and how do we set those boundaries? We're both adults
Right.
and we are individuals, right? And then so we have our own set of beliefs. We want certain things, we may not always want to share some things, keep something
mhm,
back, something, worrisome. We don't want you to worry about. But those things, do we talk through through different scenarios? Or we just leave sometimes things ambiguous
Mhm.
could lead to tension.
mhm.
Right.
Then how do we share about privacy? How do we set those boundaries?
Well, again, I don't think many people are having conversations about when mom or dad gets sick, who are they moving in with, right? Like
Right.
I don't even think that conversation's happening. I think that conversation happens when that person gets sick and it's like, well, who's closer, who's available?
Right.
And so definitely like that conversation needs to happen. And then if it didn't, imagine having to like jump in where you didn't expect to. How do you have all
Right.
the other conversations about, privacy, rules of the house? Like
Right.
that changes things.
Right. Because a lot of times what it does, it makes you feel like you are a child again, right?
Mhm.
So it's like, do I have to tell my mom I'm going out on a date? Or if you have a husband and young kids,
Mhm.
do I move my husband and kids in with my mom, especially if
Mhm.
this person has a house and we live in an apartment? So there definitely need to be a come to Jesus moment where everyone involved is having a conversation, because here it is. You don't want to lose your husband, because here's what's going to happen. You move in with your mom, with your husband and your children, and now you become 10 again, or you
Mhm.
become 12 again, right? Because what mom or dad does not realize is that you are a grown woman with a family of her own. So
Mhm.
then it could put additional strain on your relationship and communication, right?
Mhm.
So I would say, I mean, I am advocating for individuals. The minute you get 18 or you have children who turn 18, start having these conversations with them
Mhm.
so they could know what to do when an emergency happens. What is my next step if the emergency happened? Am I coming to you? Do I know where the money is? Do I know where the finances is? Do I know where the bank accounts are? Do I know where the insurance papers are? What is happening? So I think that is something, these conversations needs to happen, and they need to happen prior to the
Mhm.
hospitalization, prior to the diagnoses, prior to the strokes and the Alzheimer's. Because here's the thing, if the person don't have these things in place prior to the Alzheimer's diagnosis or dementia diagnosis or
Mhm.
cognitive impairment diagnosis, guess what? There might not be, the doctors might not sign the most. The doctor might not,
Mhm.
people might not want to sign on the dotted line that this person is indeed in their
Mhm.
right mind, right?
Mhm.
To make a decision on their health or finances.
So you've mentioned Zoe said something
Mhm.
good in terms of clarity. We need to have clarity,
Right,
bring
Mhm.
clarity into the relationship, bring clarity into this conversation to say,
right,
here's all my important papers are.
Mhm.
right,
It happens, you know where they are. And
right.
same thing here, right? But then I start thinking about what we're discussing when change happens in memory, when change happens in physical,
Mhm.
and change happens slowly, some gradually, sometimes it
Right.
happens
Mhm.
very abrupt. When things happens abrupt, when crisis happens, so that's when we kind of like, okay, so what happens now? How do we take care of each other? How do we
Mhm.
take care of mom or dad or as a family member? And then start having those conversations. But when things starts happening gradually, when it's just a one little thing, right? Just
Mhm.
wants money for getting your keys. And it starts with that. then you misplaced the phone. And sometimes, you had a fall. Nothing really truly changed. It just I had a fall. Oh,
Mhm.
I lost my balance. Question becomes, what is my health? And what is it my own expectation assumptions as I'm going older that
Mhm.
I like to happen? And then how do I want to
Mhm.
lead that life? And then part of that clarity comes first for yourself. And you start writing down those things, what's important to me.
Right.
Uh, but then the other side of that, what does a privacy means to me? I
Mhm.
don't think we ever think about those in that framework. I think we kind of assume that other people understand what privacy for me means.
Right. You're going to have to put those things in place, especially if you're
Mhm.
moving in with your loved one. That's one. But two, I think one of the biggest issue I think most adult children have is what is the quality of your current relationship with your mom or dad or the family member that is having this crisis, right? What is the quality of that relationship? One. Two, how often are you communicating with that individual? Right? Because if you're not communicating frequently, again, you're not going to see those minute changes. You're not going to see those little changes that the person might not share with you upfront. Right? So, based on if you're speaking to this person every day, every other day, you might notice something is off cognitively. You might notice that they're forgetting words. You might notice that they're telling you the same story over and over again. Like, and you, if you're paying attention, you're going to say, wait a minute, you just told me the story 5 times in 5 minutes. Or you just told me this story yesterday when I spoke to you. Oh, I did? Oh, okay. Or they might mention, you know what? I'm looking for my glasses and the glasses is on their face. Or I'm looking for my phone. The phone is on in front of their hand. They're talking to
Zoe,
you on the phone.
I do that all the time now.
So then what's the plan?
Barbara, we got to talk to your husband. God, we got to talk to your husband,
But
Barbara.
there's one thing
God.
that always skips said something very interesting. Quality of a relationship.
Yes.
Mhm.
Yes.
How often we visit, how often we call, where they are. But then again, it's rebuilding and restarting relationship.
Right.
We are in relations to other people and to other
Right.
things. It
Right.
doesn't have to be person. It could be a pen, a cigarette. We always in a relationship to something
Mhm.
because we don't live in an island, so we have relations to with the water. How often we drink the water. We have relationships with food. What type of food we eating?
Right.
What things I like or don't like?
Right.
Is it, relationship with the money, how much I spend money, how fast they going, where they go,
Right.
Mhm.
or I save everything, I don't spend anything,
Right.
and that's becomes a relationship that we have with those things. Now we also have another with the person, and then how they spend their money, and conflicts tends to happen if you overspend and you try to
Mhm.
save. That leads to conflict, right?
Right.
And then sometimes, maybe I don't like the communications. And I don't like to get reminded of taking medications.
Right.
And now I have to take these medications, and I'm resentful towards that.
Mhm.
And now
Mhm.
you
Mhm.
coming in and says, "Mom, please take your medications. Do you take your medications this morning? Do you take it in the evening?" And I'm like, "Wait a second, where did this come from?"
Right.
Right?
Mhm.
When we're having conversations, are we asking not just those questions, but actually understanding what this relationship is?
Right.
What is my relationship with my mom, my dad is, or as a family member? Because love itself
Mhm.
may be enough for you to move in, or for them to move in with you. But love is not enough to sustain that relationship unless there is a
Right.
Mhm.
conversations. And if we don't have conversations, that's when things break down and tension rise,
Mhm.
and we fail.
Yeah. This is we could have a whole 'nother hour conversation based on that alone because it
Yeah.
just got a bit more complicated, right? If we're talking about rebuilding relationships with our parents or with our loved ones that
Right.
maybe, I mean, we're talking about childhood and we all know how complicated that is, right? And we're talking about forgiveness and I mean
Right.
it gets deeper. It gets much deeper. I don't think it's that
Right.
easy just to rebuild and say, you know what, I forgive you, I love you, I'm gonna take care of you. That's not realistic.
Right.
It's very intense. It's very, very intense.
Right.
Right.
But
Uh,
I think that's where the tensions comes up. Us,
yeah, no, for
you know,
sure, yeah.
step in and they have to take over.
Mhm,
Oh, this person takes over my money. This sort of
mhm,
how I make decisions. This person tells me take medication, when to bathe, when to sleep, when to eat.
mhm,
Oh, wait a second. I didn't ask for that. I just wanted some company. I was lonely.
Right. Right.
But
mhm,
and then that's another part becomes, right? Or all of a sudden I could, if I have a stroke and now I can now move part of my body. Now if somebody else
mhm,
comes in, take care of me, change me. That's a
Right.
mhm.
change.
So
Even
Yeah.
that
been there for a while, you've done this for a while, people
Mhm,
still presenting idea that I can clean my own
mhm.
my butt,
right.
Okay.
right?
Mhm,
So that's a part where assumptions, fears, and then
mhm,
lack of sitting down and says, "Listen, I'm going to be respectful towards you. We may have
mhm,
disagreements, but just
mhm.
Mhm.
start a conversation. Let's talk."
Right,
Right.
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 And we can start with one question: What is
Mhm,
Right.
important? What do you
Right.
want from me?
mhm.
Right.
Sometimes it
Right.
could be not even important. What do you want from me?
And I,
What do you see this gonna go?
Mhm,
How do you see this happen? And
mhm,
so
then
Alexi,
how are we
I
gonna
think
have that, one time conversation throughout, because it doesn't happen, it doesn't have this happen all the decision making in one setting.
mhm.
So that's
right.
time and
Right.
effort and all the time. But I
I
think
oh
that question is, it could be it's very simple to start with yourself first,
right.
figuring out where are you at, what is it you need, what is it you're thinking about your relationship, how you see the relationship with your parents, to yourself first, to make
Mhm,
it clear,
Right.
to clarify yourself. And then
mhm,
that's when the therapist comes in sometimes. So that's when the social worker or
mhm,
other helping professionals could come in. You could
mhm,
walk through that process with them, and that kind of maybe open up the dialogue.
I also
mhm,
think that we have to remember if our family member is able to think for themselves. So the thing is, we got to remember that the person have autonomy, right? So if the individual doesn't have dementia or Alzheimer's, and even if we suspect, we need to make sure that it's diagnosed, right? Because then we can't just step in and start making decisions for the person who still is mentally capable of making decisions for themselves, right? If it's a case where the person is physically ill and needs someone to take care of them physically, the person has their own mind, they're still able to think for themselves. They might say, well, you know what? I want to sit here. I don't want to bathe. I don't want to take my meds. You cannot force them, right? I'm always encouraging families to say, listen, this person is able to think for themselves. As much as you have great intentions, are allowed, adults in their right mind is allowed to make bad decisions. At the end of the day, if they have total autonomy, they can make decisions that you do not agree with. That is not safe. That is not right in your eyes. But for them, they're totally okay with it, right? But that is why it's important to connect with the doctors, the social workers, the psychiatrists, whomever it is, to make sure that am I stepping in and making decisions for someone who is incapable of making decisions for themselves? Or am I coming in as a caretaker, making and helping with decision making for this person care? Because this person physically cannot take care of themselves. And what are the boundaries there? Because am I still allowing this person to make decisions? Right? Because we don't want to take away their ability to think for themselves if they're able to. We don't want to take away the ability for them to do for themselves if they're able to. So I always believe that as you're speaking to your loved ones, find out, are they taking their diabetic medication? or they're taking their high blood pressure medication, or they're taking their medication for Parkinson's or dementia, or whatever it is. Verify, because guess what? That will give you a clear idea of how compliant this person is with taking their meds, right? If you see the person wearing the same blue shirt every time you see them on FaceTime, you speak to them every day on FaceTime, and you see them with the same blue shirt on, that is a clear indication that A, they might not be bathing. Two, they might not be changing their clothes. They might be bathing, but not changing their clothes. So guess what? You start asking those questions. Mom, I see that you're wearing that same shirt from yesterday. How often are you washing that shirt? Is that your favorite shirt? Right? You start asking those questions. So you get an idea what you're going to get yourself into if you have to step into that role as caregiver. Because if that person is the person who is very stubborn, non-compliant, don't take care of their health, don't take medical advice, don't take their medications, don't like to walk, don't like, you're going to have a very hard time. And then that's when you have to think, am I stepping in as the superhero? Do I have the superhero complex? Do I have guilt? Okay. Why am I stepping in? Am I stepping in to provide care, or am I stepping in to direct care, meaning to obtain care or to get them in a place where they're going to be safe?
What do you think, bro?
I think it's important to understand your role, right? Like
Right,
what exactly is it that I'll be doing? But
right.
I was gonna say to you, you know what, Mom, you know what, Dad, remember all those things you did to me when I was a kid? Well, now I'm gonna do it right back to you. Remember the rules that you set for me? Remember, because I hear that a lot. I hear that a lot, like
Right.
from people that, that are caretaking to their parents or to their grandmother. It's like, well, they did this to me, so I'm just gonna give it back because that's how they learn to caregive, right?
But
It's a slippery slope sometimes, but
I was just
I
saying
do
that
agree with you
sounds
a
very
hundred
abusive.
percent. Yeah, 100% agree with you that it's important to understand what you're stepping into and how much
Right.
care you have to give and how much of your life is going to be kind of disrupted by this. So yeah, that's really important. Understand, like you need to know everything.
And then here's
Mhm.
a key component. You just mentioned a lot of things. You were saying
Mm,
non-compliant, doesn't take
mm-hmm.
medication. All of it in my brain was like label, assumption, bias, judgment. All of those things just go
I was like,
off.
oh, stop.
That's what, no, and that's what the reason why
It's
we built
true. It's true.
language.
It's true.
But
Mm,
Barbara asked about well, how do we start conversations or
But you ask questions. You ask the
ask
yeah.
questions where
questions.
to start, and then we started asking. It's like asking.
Right.
As this before. And I think that becomes again, we're waiting for the crisis to happen. But again, I think
Mhm.
part of all this, those labels, that type of language exists because something is not doing something. It's a control.
Right.
Mhm.
And there's the other
Mhm.
Right.
part of you mentioned safety. Well, whose safety is it really about? Mine,
Right.
yours? And this becomes a fight and a tension again. Because
Mhm.
I don't want to be restricted in a nursing home or assisted living, no matter what
Right.
people say. I want to be able to get out of the home when I want it
Mhm.
and
Right.
go to the Starbucks nearby and get my
Mhm.
coffee. I can read my paper. Well, that's not always that happens in assisted living or any
Right.
other set of places. Who's to say that you are not just understanding me?
Well, that's
Mhm.
why I said, Alexi, that when it comes to autonomy, we have to make sure that if this person is unable to take care of themselves, that
And
the
here's a key component in that conversation
diagnoses
again.
are in place.
Who makes a decision unable to? And because
The
as you mentioned,
doctors. The
dementia, they
doctors.
don't know they have dementia. They don't know that.
No, they don't. Not until they go to the doctor and the doctor examine them. Yep. Not
No,
until
they don't
they.
always recognize.
I'm gonna
No.
have to agree with Alexi because, the doctor can tell you one thing, but what happens in the home tends to stay in the home, especially when they have dementia, right? Like they can't even say, I'm being I'm being harmed, being abused. They're not letting me do certain things. But
So
like
I was
here's
referring
what
to this.
I'm. I
People,
disagree
sorry,
a
did
little
I
bit.
misunderstand that?
no,
Okay.
no, no. What I was referring to when you have a memory loss, you don't know you
Right.
have memory loss.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
No.
you living because your short-term memory is shot,
Right.
especially so yes, but your long-term memory is not. And so what you remember, it could come from 5, 10 years ago. So
Right.
what you're
Right.
reacting is to what that
Is to
long-term
that.
memory
Right. Right.
and the
Right.
time
But what I'm
period
Mhm.
saying,
the person was going through. So
Mhm.
safety part, and that's where it becomes tension, especially if caregivers are taking care of individuals with dementia and other cognitive changes. And so the safety and then who makes decisions and how much decisions are being made where it becomes
Mhm.
different. And that happen from that perspective because they live a different reality.
right.
Mhm.
The part of all this goes back again, I feel like where we started.
Mhm.
Um, it's about health. Even if you're healthiest person ever,
Right.
having about conversation about the health, my family members' health. What do you think of your health?
Mhm. Mhm. So I would say to you, Alexi, you're absolutely right.
Mhm.
The person who might be living with dementia or Alzheimer's might not know that they have dementia or Alzheimer's, right? But you, that's why I say it's important to have that relationship. You, the family member, if you have consistent communication with this person, is going to notice the difference and is going to ask the questions. I'm hoping that someone asks the question, when was the last time you saw your doctor? It's been 5 years since you saw your doctor? Or are you still taking those meds? How are you getting your meds refilled? Right? You think you want me to go with you to your next doctor's appointment? But when individuals go to their doctors, they're asking a number of questions. Based on those answers, doctors can clearly see if that, based on age, based on the way you answer, that there's something going on with you. If you come in smelling like you haven't taken a shower in a month, they know something is going on with you, right? They're going to ask about maybe who is taking care of you at
Mhm.
home, who's helping you at home. If you say no one, they might say, okay, we might need to get some social services in place, right? Based on the way you answer the questions about your history, they're going to say, wait a minute, the answers from last year or 2 years ago seem a little bit off. The doctor might have a different opinion about what's going on with you cognitively. So again, I would say you're absolutely right. Start having the conversations. If you know your mom have diabetes, your mom have high blood pressure, your mom has Parkinson's or high cholesterol, whatever it is, start having those conversations. Mom, dad, when was the last time you saw your doctor? Right? Do you want me to go with you on your next doctor's appointment? I will make myself available to go with you to your next doctor's appointment. Because here is what you're trying to figure out. Is this person cognitively, physically able to continue to take care of themselves? And if they are, great. They have autonomy to still make decisions, pay their bills. But guess what? If the cops are calling you because, or the neighbors calling you to say, your mom has been missing for 2 days, or your dad went out in the middle of the night in his underwear. Clearly, something is going on. But those conversations, to your point, Alexi, has to be a part of your communication. I believe in open communication and I believe in frequent communication and I believe in asking the hard questions. And the problem why most people don't ask the hard questions is not that they don't want to know, they don't know how they can help, right? They're starting to think, can I help financially? I don't have the money. Can I help physically? I don't want to move to Michigan. They're thinking all these things in their head. Just have the conversation. Because to your point, we will not know what the mom or dad, aunt, uncle wants if we don't have the conversation.
Mhm.
Uh,
Yeah.
so concluding this, we know that life, as Barbara mentioned,
Mhm.
in lifespan, we change. Life change.
Yep.
Our health changes.
Absolutely.
Our relationship with people changes. Some people
Yep.
stay for whole
Mhm.
ride. Sometimes we lose contact with other individuals. Sometimes they come back. Sometimes we met brand new people and we build a relationship that way, like we do here right now, right?
Mhm.
I reconnected with Zoe and I met Barbara in the previous job, and then we kind of talk about and share things
Mm,
about what I do, and then kind of felt like we wanted the same thing. We wanted to build something together, and
Right.
but the relationship builds slowly over time.
Right.
Like these conversations builds over time and slowly.
Right.
Um, and it starts again with simple share. I went to my doctor. I did my physical, and I'm good. I have a good bill of health. And what about you? That's as
Mm.
simple as that. And if it only comes once a year, that's fine.
Right.
So then the question becomes, as we're concluding this, what is one conversation every family should have before moving together?
mm,
I think they should have a conversation about finances and what will be my role, right?
mhm,
So it could be that I'm stepping in as your caretaker, or I'm stepping in as your
mm,
financial advisor, or I'm stepping in to help you navigate your overall health and well being, right? So, what is your role in moving in with mom or dad? What are you going to be doing? What am I going to be responsible for? And if you both agree that this is your role, have those clear boundaries, have those privacies, because at the end of the day, you yourself do not want to get burned out. You don't want to become resentful, or you don't want to have guilt, right? Because you feel like you're not doing everything you should do. Have the conversation, get the resources, ask a lot of questions, visit on medical appointments, and make the blueprint of how things are going to be. But absolutely take care of yourself. Absolutely put boundaries in place. Absolutely put privacy in place, because at the end of the day, just because you're stepping into that role, right? You are an individual with your own life, with your own family, with your own situation going on. You want to make sure that you're not burning yourself out where you're no good to yourself, you're no good to your husband or wife, and you're no good to your children if you have any.
mm,
So I would say in all those things, ask the right
mm.
questions and make the role very clear of what it is that you are going to be doing, and ask for help. If you know that it's going to take a village, ask for help. Find other people in the family or in the community who can also support you taking care of that person possible.
I'll agree with you, Zoe. Have the role, like what your role is. That conversation is definitely a must. Definitely finances, but also what time are we having dinner every night? And I only say that because I feel like my best conversations are when I'm sitting down and eating with someone,
Eating.
right?
Mhm.
And I don't know. It's something you can do together every day, no matter how hectic your lives are,
Yep.
right? Hopefully, but also it opens the door to conversation.
Yep. I like that, Barbara.
I'm gonna say this: love does not remove need for space.
Right. Absolutely.
Mm,
What we do is come from love, but the space is just important to have
Yep.
because you need to replenish your energy, and the only way to do it when other person respects that space as well, and you respect theirs. So thank you. We hope you enjoyed this conversation. I hope it resonates with you, and if it does, please like, share, and subscribe. Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.